Hi, everybody. Welcome to the second part of our conversation about James Madison and Federalist number 10. Right now, we're going to talk about the Constitution. So, Madison, in order to deal with factions, suggests creating a government that will encourage as many factions as possible. And the idea is that if you have a large number of factions, then no single faction will become too powerful. In other words, they'll always be in competition with each other, and no single faction will become too powerful. So the idea is to create a republic, in fact, a federal republic, which is what we wound up creating in the United States. And the idea behind this is because, number one, there will be checks and balances, so that will prevent any one branch of government from getting too powerful. And then, number two, a strong central government will prevent factions from spreading from one state to the next, or from any one state becoming too powerful. Now, what the Constitution also does is it creates limits on both the government's power and on the people's power. So, going back to the idea of factions, you could think of the people being one large faction and the government being one large faction. So there's a bunch of different ways that the Constitution limits the power of the government, and there's a bunch of different ways that the Constitution also limits the power of the people. So, limiting the power of government. Number one, it spreads the government over three different branches: the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. The idea is that each branch of government is a faction, so no single branch of government will become too powerful. There will always be competition between the different branches of government. A second way the Constitution limits the power of government is by outlining specific powers that each branch of government is going to have. Now, this may sound counterintuitive, the idea that you could limit power by granting power. But this is how the idea works. If, for example, I give Congress the power to declare war, which Congress has the power to do, then by extension, I am also saying that the president does not have the power to declare war. So by granting specific powers to specific branches of government, I'm also by extension saying that the other branches don't also have that same power. So that's the second way, again, that the Constitution limits the power of government. Number three, our Constitution includes a Bill of Rights. That's the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. And the Bill of Rights is essentially a series of limits placed on what government can do. And that is the Bill of Rights. We will have a full class in the future about the Bill of Rights and our civil liberties that are connected to the Bill of Rights. So I'm not going to get too deep into that right now. Number four, the Constitution limits the power of government by creating a federal system. Remember, a federal system is a system in which power is shared between a large central government and smaller governments. The idea is that the states, which are those smaller governments, will act to prevent the central government from becoming too powerful, and the states will also prevent other states from getting too powerful, and the central government will also prevent any one state from becoming too powerful. Again, these are all different factions competing for power. Also, and finally, I'll say, another way that Congress, or rather, another way that the Constitution creates more factions and limits the power of government is by creating a Congress that's divided into two separate bodies. So the United States Congress is divided into a House of Representatives and a Senate. That's called a bicameral Congress. We're going to talk more about that in a future class. But the power of Congress itself is divided into two different factions. So Congress can't get too powerful. So these were 5 different ways that the Constitution limits the power of government. And now we're going to talk about some ways that the Constitution limits the power of the people. Number 1, it created a system in which only one government body is elected by the people. So in the original Constitution, the people who could vote could only vote for members of the House of Representatives. The people could not vote for the Senate or for senators until 1913, and we still don't vote directly for the president. And we're going to talk about that more when we have our class on elections. So number 1, again, when the Constitution was originally created, the people only had the power to vote for members of the House of Representatives. Number 2, a second way that the people's power is limited is by creating a slow-moving system. Our government is slow-moving by design, which frustrates a lot of people today, but you have to understand that our government is actually designed to be slow, to respond to our demands. It's slow by design. So, how does having a slow responding government limit the people's power? It's like this. People, regular people like you and I, you and me, we get upset about things all the time. We see something on the news, we read something in the paper, we read something in social media, and we get outraged. And we say, oh my God, someone should do something about this. And then what happens? A couple days later, or even a couple hours later, something else comes along, and we forgot about the first thing. Well, in 1789, when the Constitution was ratified, people weren't that different back then. They got upset about a lot of things, often. And the people who designed the Constitution understood that if government could make laws really quickly and respond to the people's demands really quickly, then we might wind up having too many laws. And if we have too many laws, that will limit the people's freedom. So by design, our government is slow moving. And a third way that the people's power is limited is by staggering the different terms of the branches of government. So a president's term is 4 years long, a senator's term is 6 years long, and a House member's term is 2 years long. So what this means is that there's no single time where the entire government is up for re-election. So there's no single time that the voters in the United States can completely throw out the government and elect a brand new government. And that's because, by design, that's prevented from happening, because the terms of the House, the Senate, and the President are all different. And then number 4, the Constitution creates what's called an insulated judiciary. By that, I mean that the federal court system is run by judges who are nominated by a president that, remember, we didn't vote for originally, nor do we vote directly for the president today. And it was nominated by a president and voted for by senators. And again, it wasn't until 1913 that the people could actually vote for senators. And then once someone becomes a federal judge, they hold that position for life. So once you become a federal judge, your term is the rest of your life or until you retire. So we call that an insulated judiciary. And the idea behind that is so the federal courts could make decisions that are unpopular with the people to protect the court system from us and therefore limit our powers. We're going to talk a lot more about that in a future class. So that concludes our discussion about Federalist 10, and I look forward to our next discussion. Make sure you email me with any questions. Bye.